So, hello. Apologies for the false start just there. I forgot to add a title. 1 minute, let me just tell my son to keep quiet a minute. Jeannie, can you keep quiet? I'm doing a live. Yeah, go and be noisy elsewhere, mate. Yeah, sorry, my son's got his best mate over and they're rampaging around the house. So, yeah, welcome. Going to be joined today by a teacher called Anna from Odesa, who is just asking to join. 1 minute. Let me go live with Anna. If that works. Sorry. I haven't done one of these for a while and I'm a little bit rusty, so give me a second, yeah? Let me just accept. Hey!
Hello! Hi there!
I can see we've gone for strike today.
Yeah. Yes, I see that. Thank you for having me today.
Hey,
Such a pleasure. Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
How are you?
More or less, trying to cope with everything that we have today because, the last 2 days were pretty tough for all Ukrainians, not only for people in Odesa, for Kharkiv as well. So, yeah, we're trying to live anyway.
Yeah.
And today it was extremely difficult for people of Odesa because today we bade the farewell to a little girl who was only 4.5 years old. Her name was Lada, and she was wounded, she was injured on the 29th of April. So it's a real disaster for her family and for all the people of Odessa and Ukraine as well.
Yeah. And I'm guessing most people who are watching will have seen what's happened in Kharkiv over the weekend. If you haven't, I mean, there's just been relentless terror attacks on Kharkiv. The Russians bombed a hypermarket yesterday on a Saturday when it was very busy, and I haven't seen the latest death toll, but last time I checked it was 11 or 12 dead and many more injured. And just the fact that you're targeting hypermarkets at the weekend is just a kind of sign of the ongoing terror attacks that they seem to be carrying out. And how's the deaths been the last few days or few weeks?
I'm afraid to say that it was quiet, but it was somehow. So at night we have the alerts. Sometimes we have them at night, during the day, but we try to leave anyway. Yes, and sometimes I'm taking some medicine that I was prescribed by my doctor because of the sleep deprivation that I had after the 29th of April, and that's why I sleep rather well. So I might not even hear what's going out.
I'm wondering about how Ukrainians cope with the sleep deprivation, because obviously sleep deprivation is a form of torture in lots of institutions. I mean, I know in like the horrific situations in Guantanamo Bay, they would use really loud music to keep people awake for long periods of time and sort of slowly drive people crazy from this. So I often wonder how people deal with the lack of sleep and the exhaustion that must just kick in from the endless air raid alerts. And I guess one solution is you just get medicated and you sleep through.
Yes, that for me it's the only way now, the only option, because otherwise I'm getting insane because of the sleep deprivation. Yes, I'm getting too aggressive, and I see what's happening with the people around me. They have the same reaction, unfortunately. Yes, it can last for some time. You can have the sleep deprivation for months too, but not for 2.5 years. Yes, so it's really tough. I would agree.
Without wishing in any way to compare the situations, I remember when my daughter was little and she was a very bad sleeper, and we had 2 years of just complete exhaustion and sleepless nights, and I was a wreck of a human being. I had to go
yes.
work, and I'd go into work and there'd be like vomit on my shoulder that I hadn't cleaned off, and I just couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't concentrate on anything. So
yes. Yeah, I can relate because I have 2 children and I know what you're talking about. And as to sorry?
You've had practice at least.
Yeah, yes, I was prepared. Yeah, but I noticed that people really lose the concentration, and sometimes it's really dangerous to drive on the roads because, yes, sometimes you're driving and you do not understand what the other driver is doing. Yeah, so that's because of the sleep deprivation, the total unnerving situation, the stress, the utter stress. Yeah, you're right.
I guess what you then have to, it's like a kind of devil's bargain, isn't it? Because if you're taking medication to help you get a proper night's sleep, it means that you're not always waking up when the air raid alerts go off, and you're not always going down to the shelters or whatever.
Oh, yes. But, in Odessa, there is a big problem with the bomb shelters. We do not have the proper bomb shelters. It's not a secret for anyone. Yes, we do not have the underground stations. And if you want to run somewhere, it will take you time. And for example, when there is a ballistic missile, you have 2 minutes. You will not even leave your house during these 2 minutes. So the only thing, yes, the only thing that we can do is to pray and hope that it will fly away or it will be damaged somewhere above the sea by our armed forces. So that's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And are you from Odessa originally, Anna?
Oh, I have a very interesting story. Just a couple of words about me. My father was a Ukrainian, and unfortunately, he passed away in 2013. And my mother is Russian, and they met in Odessa here when he returned from the war in Afghanistan. So he spent 2 years there being a soldier. You understand that he believed in what he was fighting for.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But by the end of his life, he realized that he was wrong, that the Soviet army was absolutely wrong. So they met here in Odessa, and he proposed her pretty soon, just in a couple of days. And
what I'm doing in Odessa?
Oh, she visited her relatives here because, yes, her uncle lived here. And she came here just to have rest with her cousin. And she met my father, luckily for me. Yeah, and so he proposed to her, and she returned back to her native city, that is Izhevsk. Probably you know it. It's the Udmurt Republic, yes, near the Urals. And she prepared for the wedding. He came to her. They had kind of the low-key ceremony because nobody from his side arrived there. I do not know why. So they traveled all over the Soviet Union and ended up in Berlin, in Germany, where I was born. So we lived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was still an officer of the Soviet army, and we lived there till I was 3 years old. And after that, he was enrolled in some military academy in Moscow. So we saw the collapse of the Soviet Union with our own eyes. We lived there, I think, well, as far as I remember, not very long, about 2 or 3 years. And finally, we returned to Odessa, settled here, and I'm still living here. And I consider Odessa the most beautiful, the best city for me. So I can't say that I come originally from Odessa, but my heart belongs to this city as well as to this country. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to come back to Odessa in a minute. I'm curious about your dad. So your dad was basically a Soviet army officer until the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And did he then join the Ukrainian armed forces, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he pleaded to the Ukrainian army after that. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, we came to Odessa, and he immediately joined the Ukrainian army. Yeah, so he was the colonel of the Ukrainian armed forces.
I often wonder how it must feel for those guys of that generation who once fought and trained alongside people who are now trying to kill them. I mean, it's very difficult to understand how that must make you feel.
It's insane, it's insane because nobody expected that kind of the events that happened. Yeah, so you know, sometimes I think, how would my father react on this or that situation? But I can't ask him anymore, unfortunately. Yeah.
And your mum is still, she's still with us? Is she still alive?
Yes, thank God I have mother. Yeah, and even after the death of my father, she never wanted to go back to Russia. Never. She is also a teacher. She teaches psychology in the university, and she speaks Ukrainian into how she can, you know, and she never returned. So it's okay. We visited my granny, her mother, there, because we have relatives there. So it's something that I can't not mention, right? So we visited them every summer. We went there till 2013 when my father died. So after that, we didn't have the opportunity to go there. And after 2014, nobody wanted to go there.
Yeah. How does your mum feel today? I mean, how does she feel being originally Russian, living in Ukraine under attack from Russia?
Weird. I would say that it's weird. Yeah. You know, and I'll explain why. Because the flat where my granny lived, the windows of this flat went out on the plant where the missiles are produced. Can you imagine the tragedy? So the city, my mother's city, is actually producing the missiles that come to us. They come to kill us. Yes. So it's insane. Absolutely. And my mom, she was not in shock. I wouldn't say that that was shock. She was devastated during the first period of, you know, the full scale invasion. Yeah, but her sisters, she still has 3 sisters there, and I have 5 cousins. So her sisters try to omit these topics, you know? Yeah,
Yeah,
and
violence.
yes, kind of. And my mum, you know, she's not waiting for their response. She just says what she thinks about them. That's it. Yeah. And as to my cousins, during the first days of the full-scale invasion, one of my cousins texted me something like that: "Wait, you will be soon liberated." What? I do not need to be liberated. I'm okay here. I do not need anyone coming and save me. And he reminded such insane things like Sashko Bieley. I do not even know who's that. He mentioned him like this: Sashko Bieley killed our Russian soldiers in Chechnya. Where is the connection? What are you thinking about? Yes, and I understand how brainwashed he is. Though he's 47 years old, I think it's the age where the people are able to use their brains already, right?
You'd like to
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just waiting for our victory in order to text him something like that. You see, that's what it is. I was right. You were wrong. Yeah. So I hope it will come soon. This opportunity will come soon.
it just the only way I can kind of come to understand it is I mean, over the last 2.5 years, I've had so many messages from Russians of my acquaintance where I used to go there a lot, and I see the same things repeated over and over again. And, you know, a lot of it is the kind of predictable things like, where were you for 8 years while Donbass was going on? And Odessa is a Russian city and we have to protect Russian speakers. And the only way I can really understand it is that there's still a very deep idea that anyone who speaks Russian must, by definition, be Russian. And if they refuse to say that they are Russian, even though they speak Russian, then they're Nazis and they have to be killed. And that seems to be the logic, if you like, kind of driving the sort of genocidal impulses of what Russia's trying to do. It's like, if you refuse to recognize that you are actually the same as us, we will kill you. And I mean, it's I mean, as someone from England, where obviously English has spread because of English colonialism, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that now in the 21st century you might claim that everyone who speaks English is English is just like so insane. I mean, you can't even go to Scotland and tell people this, you know, you get a punch in the face very quickly.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
such an insane idea, but I think that kind
absolutely.
of brainwashing is very clearly driving a lot of people's acceptance of murder, basically. And
Yeah.
I think,
And you know, in terms of even one family, I still have two cousins who are not as brainwashed as that one. And one of them even expressed his opinion openly. Um, Unfortunately, he ended up with losing his job.
yeah,
So, and he had to pay some fines for what he said and so on. And now he's sitting at his home and do not live in it because he's afraid for his life. So I can't blame him for that. And yes. And the second cousin, he also texted me. He texts sometimes with the words of support, but I understand that he can't express it openly in public at his job, so at his work. So, okay, that's enough. At least I see that some of my relatives have brains and they can divide where the truth is and where the lies is. So I don't know whether I'll be able to meet them in person one day, because it will be very tough for me.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
because of the reason that I mentioned before. Yeah.
I was at IATEFL this year in Brighton, and there were a group of Russians that I kind of know. Some of them I know quite well. I've worked with them before, and I found it very, very, very difficult to manage anything more than a kind of quick nod and a handshake, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of it's that kind of weird silence of avoidance that I find very, very difficult to deal with. And I mean, I feel it on social media where I go on Instagram or Facebook and all my Ukrainian friends are posting pictures from Kharkiv of the latest terror attack. And then I see Russians posting pictures of their holidays and families and things. And it's just like, kind of, your brain starts to break looking at these two different realities. And I find the avoidance, you know, even if you understand the avoidance, it's still very difficult to communicate. Well, what do? You know, you talk about the weather.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, how's the weather? Fine, anyway. You know, it's a kind of very weird way of having a conversation when you can't talk about the elephant in the room. You know.
Exactly. So I think they just do not want to feel that responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, for their actions. Actually, yes, their silence brought to these consequences, right? So that's really awkward. I remember the first days again of the full-scale invasion when we tried to shout in social media, we were crying out, we were addressing different people, teachers, not only teachers from Russia, saying, asking them, please go do something and so on. And they just ignored, or sometimes they wanted to get some proof. Which proof? It's obvious who is bombing us. It's absolutely obvious. So, and after I think 1 week of such kind of messaging with Russians, I just gave up. I realize it's absolutely useless. I'm just wasting my energy. They do not want to get this responsibility. They do not want to believe that they are wrong here. Yes, they didn't like that truth. Probably that's the reason.
Well,
Yeah.
no one wants to face up to the fact that their own country has done bad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We have trouble dealing with this in England ourselves, even decades after the bad things we've done, and people still have problems looking back and kind of going, yeah, we're the bad guys in that situation, because it's much easier to tell ourselves stories about winning world wars and stopping the Nazis and, you know, being the heroes. We're much more proud of that side of our own history than we are of the slave trade and colonialism and how we made all our money in the first place. So I understand that it's difficult for people to do it, but I also understand it's crucial that you do it, because if you don't look properly at yourself in the mirror, you don't understand who you are and what you are, and you don't understand the impact that you have on the other people around you and your neighbors and on yourselves, because I mean, all of this is also massively damaging Russia as well. I mean, it's kind of, I'm thinking about the Afghan war. I mean, the number of people who have died, who have been killed and injured so far on the Russian is like 10 times higher than it was during the Afghan war already.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to have any problems just throwing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in to die so that you can take another village.
Exactly. So you see, it's obvious that that human life doesn't mean anything to them. So they have 140 million of citizens. Nobody will notice if half of them will disappear. Probably that's how they think. And for us, every person is a universe for his or her family. So that's why it's so painful for us to lose our people, not only the civilians, but also our officers, military men, soldiers, and so on. Yes, that's the difference in the mentality, I think, as well. Yeah.
Can I ask you a bit more about, I know there'll be plenty of people watching who haven't had the chance to visit Odessa. I've been lucky enough to visit myself a couple of times, and I love the city as well. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. It's one place that I went to where it just really kind of just fell in love with it first time I was there, and it feels like a very kind of free place and a very, very diverse place. I mean, when you were talking about your dad meeting your mum there, I mean, I remember sitting in cafes and bars in Odessa and just looking around at the faces and this incredible mix of different looking people. And, I know the history of Odessa is, you've got Bulgarians and Greeks and Russians and Jews and Romanians and Slavs and, all kinds of Turks and Tatars and all kinds of people kind of coming and going through Odessa. Could you say a bit more about what Odessa is for you and what it means to you and what it's like?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Before the war, that's exactly as you described, that was happening everywhere. Yes, you could feel free. Yes, you could meet anyone, any nationality there. It was so easy to find anyone to speak English on the street. And so I don't know whether it's so easy, for example, to find the English-speaking guy in Kyiv. Yeah. So, but of course, after the war, lots of the foreigners went away. But I want to say that our city is still rumbling. I can't say that it is quiet and there is no one. No, we still have people who live, who support the economy of our country and so on. So for me, Odessa, it occupies such a big place, such a big room in my heart. That's why it was so difficult for me to leave it even for half a year, because in June 2022 my children and we had to leave for London. I found the family who were our sponsors, and well, actually,
Your kids then, Anna?
Sorry?
How old were your kids at this point?
My son was 3 and my daughter was 5 years old. So yeah, I lied to them that we were going on a holiday and we would soon come back, because I believed in that. I was sure that the war would last maybe till autumn, but it would not last so long. I could not expect it to last so long. And we stayed there for 6 months, and it was very difficult for me, though I love London.
You in part?
Sorry?
Where were you? Which area?
In Barnes.
Okay. Oh, very nice.
Yes, very nice. Yeah, we were very happy to find.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Much posher than my area.
Well, yes, London is as diverse as Odessa. Yeah, we can say so. different regions, different areas, they are all very special and they're very beautiful in their certain way. Yeah, so we lived with the family. She is an Irish woman and he is an Englishman, and they had a daughter. They have a daughter, Mary. So she was just the same age as my son. They had lots of common. They liked to cry and shout together. So yeah, so that was funny for 6 months, But anyway, it was very difficult for us to stay far from home.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
though these people, they were so kind. They taught me really so much. They showed me that it is absolutely possible to open the doors of your house to the absolute strangers. Yeah, so I was really surprised with their kindness, and they showed me what the real support is. And we still keep in touch, we text, we have the chats, video chats, and it's such a pleasure to see them, to talk to them. And as I said, we did not expect to stay for so long, probably for 2 months, but we ended up with half a year.
I'm pleased to hear that my city treated you well.
Absolutely, yeah. My children liked going on adventure every weekend, so we went somewhere in the city center, somewhere like palaces. Yeah, my son made such a scandal in Buckingham Palace. I think we will always be remembered there because he was shouting and crying that it's not beautiful, I do not like being here, and so on. Because my children are
kind of thing.
Yeah, my children are bilinguals, so they speak both Ukrainian and English, and he was shouting not in Ukrainian but in English, so everybody could understand him. Yeah, funny.
But they sent him to the tower, so
Oh, I took him to the tower. We all, yes.
Or anything as punishment.
Excuse me, something
You
wrong.
in as punishment or anything.
Oh, no, I'm not so cruel.
And so in the middle of all of this, after 6 months, you decided to go back to Odessa.
Yes, we decided to go back because the children missed their father very much. I missed my husband. We missed our city. Although we do not have many friends left here, but we still have a couple of them here. And anyway, you feel at home when you're at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand the pain of all the people who had to leave their homes. We are lucky enough because we have the home to come back.
Yeah.
We still have it.
Yeah.
Yes, but who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But how harmful and how painful it is for people who lost their houses and they have no place to return. It's insane. Yeah.
And I know, living in London, I meet a lot of people who arrived as refugees from various places who have been here 30 years, 40 years, and they dream of going back to lands which are now occupied and where they have their childhood memories and everything. And I know that that kind of haunts people throughout their lives. And I've got a Palestinian friend actually called Asma, who was one of the first people to have to leave Gaza when it was being bombed, and she's now in a tent city out in the desert where she still teaches English. And no idea if her home's still there, probably not, if she can go home or not. And so I think, understanding the psychological damage that does to people and the kind of trauma that you then carry with you is it's a deep thing that people experience in that sense, I think.
Exactly. And there is such a proverb, I'm not sure whether I'll make an adequate translation, but I'll try, that the old trees are not replanted. So the older person is, the more difficult it is to change the place of living. And I saw also in London many ladies who arrived with their grandchildren, with their daughters, and how difficult it was for them. Yes, how they struggled with learning the language and so on. And they could speak about nothing except coming back to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you come back, and I understand that quite recently there was quite a kind of close shave in your family with the shelling and the bombing and stuff, yeah?
Oh, yes. We,
About it, but
you know, we live not far from the sea. That's why when the drones are flying into the city, they usually fly from the sea, because they well, and they fly above our house.
and
It is, yes, it is always so scary when you hear the sound of the drone, and then when you hear the explosion, you just have such a relief that, whew, not here, thank God, and you just wait for the next one. Yeah, but on the 29th of April, so almost a month ago, we experienced an absolute disastrous moment. It was a moment, but it seemed like the whole life for us. So my children are very fond of tennis, and I brought them, as usually, on Monday. They had the training, the tennis training. I brought them on the court to have the tennis class. And there was our tennis coach, Marina, and she suggested us to use another part of the court because it is divided into two parts, the clay court and like the rubber court. It is probably called the hard court. I'm not sure with the term. Yes, and we said, okay, why not? It even was more comfortable for me because there was a swing and where I could just read my book, relax, and observe the children playing. Except my children, there were also two other kids, the son of the tennis coach and my daughter's classmate. So I brought them all together, sat on the swing and was just watching them. And there was another boy, not boy, I don't know. For me, he will always stay a boy. That's Radion. He was also a tennis coach, and he was the brother of Marina. So she asked him whether he wanted to train children that day, and he said, "Oh, probably next time." So I'm going to train that couple of adults, and he went away to the clay court. And the training started, everything was as usual. I was reading my book, children were playing, and then suddenly there was an alert. I got the notification in my telephone.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have time to do anything because just after, I still remember the number on my telephone. That was 22 minutes after 6 p.m., you know. And I heard a very loud explosion, the first one from my left side. And it was so loud that I couldn't hear for 2 days after that. So probably my ear was somehow traumatized. So it was the awful explosion. And I was looking at children already. I shouted to them to run to me because I was running to them. They were running to me. They were all in different parts of the court. That was awful because everybody had their own task to do. And Marina, the coach, she fell down immediately. And I had the thought, why was she lying? Why didn't she escape? Because I didn't know that she was already wounded. She was not able to move. And how happy we were that the children heard me through this awful noise of explosions, because the explosions didn't stop for several seconds. You probably seen those videos. Yeah? And what is worse, while I was running to them, they were running to me. I was shocked because I didn't understand why there was the rain of steel. Little did I know that it was the shrapnel from the cluster munition. I didn't know that. I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
But with my intuition, I just covered those children, all 4 of them, and brought them to the place that, again, I didn't have time to think over very much, yes, for a long time. Only using my intuition, I brought them to the place that seemed to be a little bit safer than the rest of the court. because the rain didn't stop, the steel rain didn't stop, and we were just standing like this. The children were standing, shouting, crying, and what is worse, the boy, Marina's child, he was shouting because he thought that his mom was already dead. Can you imagine what a shock he had? I tried to calm them down, and at that period of time, at that moment, I saw how one more man was lying about 10 meters far from us. He was killed already. So it all happened just in seconds. But for us, that seemed eternity, really. Yeah. And when this rain stopped, I just tried to brought children to kind of the safe place because it had no windows anymore, the changing rooms. I brought them there, and on my way there was another mom who was running. She was running towards me, and she asked me, how are the children? I said, okay, they're okay. Marina is lying there. And at this point, I brought them to the safest place in that area, and I was calming them down, and I noticed there was one more lady who was wounded in her arm. So I just took a rubber from the mat, the yoga mat, and tried to tie it around her arm to stop the bleeding. And there was
medical training or anything, Anna? Do you have
nothing. I had the medical training when I was pregnant with my first child, you know, and that's what I want to tell everyone, that in these extreme situations, you can't rely on your brain. Yes, only the instincts will save you. And if there are some automatical movements that you already have acquired, probably they will help as well. So I don't know what moved me to do what I did, because usually, you know, I really faint when I see blood. Even a drop of blood make me unconscious. But at that point, that evening, I was absolutely calm. I had no emotions at all. I was calm. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. So I just brought children. I helped the lady. There was another guy, the adult, who was trying to remember the number of the ambulance. So can you imagine? It is even possible to forget the easiest numbers. And it took me really 2 seconds to recollect this number as well. And then I said what the number was and ran to pick up the first aid kit in my car, because I understood that we need some bandages. And when I ran to my car, I was really impressed that it was also damaged, because it was really not really far, but a little bit far from the place where we were. And I didn't understand why it was damaged as well, what kind of explosion that was. So now I understand what it was, but then it was absolutely surprising for me. Yeah.
Not be hit at all by the shrapnel.
Yeah, as well. And the windows were broken. I had holes in my cars, but you know, it's better to have the car wounded than the human body. Yes, the car could be repaired. So I picked this first aid kit and ran back, and then I saw that Rodion, another coach, he was walking with the help of his friend, and he was smiling, and I asked him how was he feeling, and he even smiled at me. That made me think that probably his trauma was not so dangerous. But then when I saw his head, I realized how dangerous it was. He was just covered with blood. I tried to bandage his head, to put the bandage around his head, and I was absolutely shocked with what I've seen, because nobody prepared me for that, nothing prepared. And he was losing his conscience. It was obvious that these were the last minutes of his life, but I didn't want to believe him. So then I ran to Marina to help her with her leg, with my partner, with Vitalia. Her name is Vitalia. Yes, we tried to tie somehow the bandages around Marina's leg, but the bandages didn't help. And by that time, Vitalia already called the police, and they reminded us that it is possible to use the belt from your trousers to use it. Yeah, so these things might seem rather obvious, yes, but you forget them.
Yeah.
Without the preparation, you just forget them. So to cut the long story short, we were waiting for the ambulance to pick up everybody who was wounded, and I just took away the children all and brought home. And only after that I realized what had happened. And after that, you know, I have different thoughts, different realities that came into my brain, how it could have happened if something went wrong, for example, if I hadn't gone there, if I hadn't reacted this way, that way, and so on. So, but it happened as it happened. And unfortunately, yes, we lost Rodion. He spent almost 10 days in coma. So his wound was too severe. And the doctors tried to do everything possible. They made several operations to take out the shrapnel from his brain. But, you know, when the shrapnel is flying, it's moving like this, on like a spiral, and it's burning.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And can you imagine what it did with his brain? The same shrapnel made with Marina's leg. So there was the mass of blood, of vein, flesh. Actually, she had the artery cut. So that's the problem. That's why there was the fountain of blood. And we were waiting for the ambulance for a rather long time. And if Vitalia didn't tie that belt too tight, so who knows what could have happened.
And what happened to her in the end?
So she
Did she
had operation, rather difficult one, yes, and she can't walk properly still, so she's walking with the stick now, and she doesn't feel her knee. So the doctors do not promise anything, but we all hope that the nerve will recover somehow, that it wasn't damaged. But actually the wound was very, very severe. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, sorry for making you cry.
No.
Yes, I understand, but you know, it's happening every day in some cities, in villages. Yeah, and we are civilians. Yes, we were not prepared. We were not prepared, and I'm sure nobody can be prepared for this. Absolutely, and the children as well. You know, before that, my children were more or less calm, but now when they hear the air siren, they just start shouting and crying and asking, is our house going to burn? Are we going to die? And I explain, no, mama is with you, everything will be all right, and so on. Yeah, that's awful.
And I think it's really important for people outside to understand that these kind of terror attacks are what Ukrainians are living with every day, and that the longer Ukraine's partners fail to provide proper, you know, air defenses, and the longer that the West refuses to let Ukraine use Western weapons to hit Russian targets inside Russia, the more Ukrainian civilians experience these kinds of things that you've described. So thank you for
yes, and it's absolutely true what you are saying. We really need this air defense, because these barbaric shellings of the civilians who were just walking near the sea, we were not fighting with them. No, we were just walking. Or for example, Rodion, he was just playing tennis with the racket in his hand. It was not a weapon. It was just a racket. Yes, and the same as this little baby girl, yes, 4.5 years. That's insane. Insane. Why should children die because of what is happening? I'm trying not to use the swear words, but sometimes it's really difficult.
Yeah, feel free to swear on my channel.
Thank you.
I've born plenty myself, so.
Thank you.
Can I just rewind a little bit?
Yeah.
So, in your family, when you were growing up, was Russian the first language?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
When did you start to switch yourself to Russian, to away from Russian and towards more Ukrainian?
Probably exactly after the start of the full invasion, full-scale invasion. Yes, and you know, I feel so proud when I speak Ukrainian because I like the melody, I like the sounds of Ukrainian language. And as you know, that mostly the Odesa population speaks, yes, used to speak Russian. Yeah, but I want to say that nowadays, if you come to Odessa, you will hear Ukrainian language more and more often. So people are switching to it anyway. And, you know, I think this process should not be very fast. We all need time because personally, I try to speak decent Ukrainian. I try to speak clear Ukrainian. My mom is speaking Surjik, but she is trying hard as well.
The two languages.
Yeah, yes. It's difficult for her, but you know, she has succeeded a lot because she has great practice at her work with her students as well as me. I'm trying to do my best to do that. Of course, we need time, but what I like that Ukrainian language is spread now by the popularization of Ukrainian language, but not by banning Russian. Yes, not only by banning Russian. For example, even 10 years ago, it was rather difficult to find any quality, I will call it quality, Ukrainian language content. And nowadays, we are exposed to such an enormous amount of Ukrainian speaking YouTubers, influencers in Instagram, wherever, and they speak beautiful Ukrainian, and that motivate others to speak as well Ukrainian.
And how does it feel for you giving up that you grew up speaking because of the war? How does it feel for you? Like if you hear Russian now, or when you think about speaking Russian, because I imagine it must be like losing. You must have a lot of memories of your life that are connected to being a Russian speaker, right?
Yes, but you know, when I hear it here, so I respect everyone's choice. So we are to speak whatever language we want. But for example, when we go abroad and I hear someone Russian speaker, the first thing that comes to my mind, oh, I want to kill them.
A lot of
yes,
have said this to me.
Yes, so I think that most of Ukrainians, deal with the same.
Ukrainian or not.
Yeah. So you just think whether they are Ukrainians or not, and we can't be sure whether they're Ukrainians or Russians, and you just keep them in distance. Yeah.
And can I also go back a little bit in terms of Odessa? When did you move to Odessa?
In 1993.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what Odessa was like in 2014 when Crimea was illegally annexed. And I'm sure you know that one of the great kind of Russian pieces of propaganda revolves around what happened in the trade union hall in
Oh, I'm sorry, I do not hear you. Oh, yes.
I'm sure you know already, but the one of the big pieces of Russian propaganda is about the fire that happened in Odessa in 2014. And, you know, that's often used as a sort of way of suggesting that Ukrainians are barbarians who burn people alive in buildings and so on. And
I can see but do not hear you again. I can read on your lips. You do not hear me as well? Oh, no, I do not hear. Uh, not. Sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, no. Oh, what a pity. Oh. Okay. Oh no, I do not hear you. Oh, the and does anybody hear me? Oh, anyway,